This is chapter 1.2, points, lines, and planes. Your cuts are on the board. Please record them, hit pause, and then go to be prepared to take your notes. Chapter 1.2, points, lines, and planes. The definition to begin: a point has no dimension, just a dot, generally represented by just that, a dot. So this is point A. So I put a small dot, point B, and so on and so forth. Again, a point is just represented by a dot. A line simply extends in one dimension. It is usually represented by a straight line with two arrowheads indicating that it goes on forever in both directions. This is the representation of a line. There's generally an arrowhead. There is an arrowhead on both ends. An example of a line would be some thread. So if you have thread, a line goes on forever and ever. So if I took it off the spool and continue to roll it forever and ever and ever, this would be an example of a line. It goes on forever. The minute I decide to cut, let's say I cut here, and I can now measure. This is not called a line, it's called a segment, a line segment. But a line goes on forever in both directions, opposite to one another, represented with arrowheads on both ends. A plane extends in two dimensions. So it may go up north and south and east and west at the same time. It looks like a sheet of paper, but imagine it has no edges. So for example, this would be our plane. Imagine the fact that it does not cut here or there. It will just go on forever and ever and ever and ever. It would extend in both directions, getting longer and longer and longer. There would be no edges on a plane. It goes on in the north and the south, the east and the west, or whatever direction you hold the plane. It goes in that direction, or those directions I should say, forever. Here's an example of a plane. We have plane here, DB, or plane BD, or we can call this plane A. Notice that there is no point for A. We don't have a representation like so for A. That means that the name of the plane is called plane A. Because there's no point, we call this plane A. That is not the only name that we can give this particular plane. We can also call this plane by its points. Because both point D and point B lie on plane A, we can also call this plane DB, or we can reverse the order of the points and call this plane BD. So there's three ways to name this particular plane. We can first name it by the plane itself that has no points, that's the actual name. We can call it plane A, or we can call this plane DB, calling it by the 2 points that lie on the plane, or we can also call this, for the third one, plane BD, because of the 2 points B and D. Next portion, collinear points are when you have points that lie on the same line. For example, we have this line here. There's 2 ways, or 3 ways we can call this line, I should say. There are 3 ways. This line, we know it's a line because, again, it has the 2 arrowheads that we discussed previously, going in 2 opposite directions. This particular line has a name attached with it. This line is called line, notice the cursive letter M. We can call this line M, or we can call this line AB. There are 2 points. There's the first point and the second point that lie on this line. Or we can call this line AB. Notice that the arrowheads are above AB to indicate that this is line AB. Or we can reverse the order and also call this line BA. It doesn't matter, okay? So 3 ways to call this line. We can call it by its cursive line, and and we write the word line. You must write the word line if you call it by its cursive letter. Line M, or you can call it by the two points that are on here with the arrowhead. You must include the arrowhead. We can call this line AB with the arrowhead above it, or we can call this line BA with the arrowhead above it. So 3 ways to line this. Okay? And when just for some information, if I call this BA, line BA, it doesn't necessarily mean that this should be B first and then A second. Okay? I'm just naming it because it goes on forever. It doesn't matter in this particular case. Other cases, it will matter. Because points A and B lie on the same exact line, they are called collinear. Notice the word line is in there, meaning A and B are on the same line. Co should help you out, like a co-pilot, okay, on the same car. If you have a co-pilot in the plane or what have you. Co, 2 of you working together in the same space. In this place, you got co working together on the same line. So A and B are collinear because they are on the same line. Coplanar. Coplanar points are lines that lie on the same plane. Now we're talking about that sheet of paper again. You've got points B and D. You've got 2 points. You've got points B and D that lie on the same plane. This sheet of paper would be a representation of the plane. Well, in this particular case, on this plane here that we discussed before, B and D are points on this plane, therefore, they are coplanar. Again, we talked about the word co, meaning they're together. Where are they together? Notice the word plane is kind of on there. They're on the same plane. Okay, so B and D are on the same plane, called plane. Remember, plane A is one way to call a plane, or we can call it by the points, plane BD, or we can also call this plane DB. 3 ways. So points D and point B, because they're on the same plane, are coplanar. Now, let's look at the line segment. We talked about that with the string, or actually the thread. Okay? The difference is if I take this with my scissors, my thread, and I decide to now cut it, it is a line segment and not a full line that goes on forever. Segments are measurable. I can take out my ruler and measure from one end of the line segment to the other end of the line segment. Line segments are written like so with the 2 dots at the end above. Notice the arrowheads are now gone. So line segment, or we just can call it a segment, consists of endpoints. We can call us line segment or segment, both mean the same. We can call this segment AB, or we can also call it BA. Okay? I don't need the little dots on the end on there. This is fine. Just like that, you just draw a line, and this means AB, line segment AB, or line segment BA, both meaning the same segment. And on this particular one, it doesn't matter which order you put, the B or the A. Next, let's look at the ray. Okay? A ray has one initial point, or one point that must stop and start at one place. That one point doesn't go on forever. But the other end point goes on continuously, forever and ever, kind of like the line. It's different from the line. It's mixed with a line and a segment. So the line portion is one portion stops, and the other end will go on forever. Doesn't matter which direction you go. So again, the ray has one initial point. The initial point is called the end point, where it's going to start. And the line portion is the opposite end. So A is the opposite end, and notice how it has the arrowhead so you know which direction goes forever and ever. How do we name this ray? This ray is going to be called ray BA. Okay, I'm just moving the highlighter here. This is important. When you write array, you must do arrowhead point and then arrowhead to the right. That's the proper way to draw it. The point, this order matters. It has to be in the order of the starting point, B. Then A goes on forever. So it's written as Ray, B-A. I cannot write this as Ray, A-B. This is wrong because A is not the initial point. It's not where you're starting. The portion A is the continuous portion. So I cannot write that as the initial or starting point with the point there. The order does matter on array. So this is wrong. You cannot do that. Okay? And again, it's written here. On array, we have Ray B-A. It cannot be written as A-B with A as the initial point. Opposite rays. Opposite rays is when you have point or several or numerous points that lie on one line. Notice this line. I can call this line several different names. Okay? First of all, I can call this line AB. Remember, I must put the arrowheads. When I don't put the arrowheads, it means it's a segment and it's cut, it's fragmented. Okay? I can also call this line BA. Okay? Some other names we'll talk about in the future. No, the arrowhead on an array does not necessarily give its direction. What does that mean? Let's look at it carefully here. Since point C is in between, not directly in the halfway, but just in between the two, line AB, that means that ray CA and ray CB are opposite rays. What do you mean? If I were to fragment this off here and just look at the portion to the left, I would write this as ray C A. Okay, and let me move this in a little closer. Again, order matters. The C is the initial point. Although on this ray, it's shooting over to the right, it doesn't matter. This is the proper way. You must write a ray with the point on the left and the arrowhead shooting over to the right. It doesn't matter that this ray is actually going to the left. The main focus and concern is that you're telling your reader C is the initial point and A is the portion that is continuous. It doesn't matter it's going to the left. I need to tell my reader that the initial point is C and A is the continuous point forever and ever. The other opposite ray that goes in the other direction is going to be, if I were looking in the right direction, it's going to be ray, and this is my symbol for ray. Again, this portion here is my initial portion, CB. In this particular case, it happens to match, both happen to be going the right direction. But remember, it doesn't matter if it's going left or right. You have got to make sure you draw your ray line like this and you name what's your initial point, your point. In this case, it's C, and it's continually going in B, so ray CB. You have two rays. The two rays that are going in opposite direction again. The two rays going in opposite direction is ray. I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. Ray CA and ray CB. Those are opposite rays. Draw lines, segments, and rays. Look carefully, read carefully your directions, and see what's going on. Draw 3 non-collinear points. What does non-collinear mean? Okay, non-collinear, we should know collinear means co together, line is in there, so they're on the same line. Well, it says non-collinear, so I want 3 points that are not on the same particular line. Draw the 3 points that cannot be on the same line, J, K, and L. Then draw, what does this mean with the 2 arrowheads? Line JK Then you need to draw a segment. This one means segment. It's cut. It doesn't go on forever. KL. And this says, and draw also. This symbol means a ray. Ray, LJ. So let's go ahead and try drawing these. So first, if we draw J, K, and L, we can clearly see here, these are points that are not collinear. They're not in the same line. L would be here, or I'd have to move J in there. They're just non-collinear. Okay? So I've done the first portion. It's checked off. Okay? So this is done. Next step, it says now we need to draw a line. Draw the line from where? J to K. Okay? So we come down here, and I draw a line, and I'm going to draw a line from J to K. Okay? I take, selecting here, okay? From J to K, I've selected 2 arrowheads. Now you can see it goes from J to K. 2 arrowheads, okay? JK, arrowheads, okay? What's the next thing we need to draw? That's done. Notice I have 2 arrowheads on there. The next direction. So I've done this here. Draw a line segment from K to L. Go from start at K, end at L, and draw a segment. Draw the appropriate. Okay? Now when I come here, I'm going to draw, it says from K to L. I'm going to take, and I draw it exactly. Notice on the J and K on the line, I went over because it's a line. It can go forever and ever. I could have extended this line all the way here or further up. But on the segment, I have to be exact. It says to draw it from K. That means I must go in the center to both. I cannot extend. And this is the symbol for segment. No arrowheads on it. So now we've done step number 3. And finally, it says draw a ray from L to J, with L being the initial point and J being the arrowhead. So now we come down, and I need a ray. And I go back quickly. What did it say? It said from L to J. So that means I go from L. I must be on L. I can't overshoot it. And I can come past that on J because this is the end with the arrowhead, and it goes on forever. Notice, I did not start at J and go past L. That's not the directions. It says start at L, go to J. Start at L, go to J. So that means I had to start at L and go to J. This is incorrect. I go on JL. The L is the initial point. So I come back. I must be on that initial point. And again, I can go further past because this is the portion that extends forever and ever. Okay? And that concludes lesson 1.2.